Hello everyone, this is just a short video to give you an overview of the IELTS academic test. I'm going to talk a little bit about the listening, the reading, the writing, and also the speaking, the interview. Talk about the different parts or the different sections of each of these modules, and how long it takes and what kind of exercise you can expect. So I'm going to start with the listening, because normally we take the listening, the reading, and the writing in that exact order on a specific afternoon. Either if you opt for the paper-based version of the test or the computer-based version of the test, you will do those three tests in that exact order. So let's get straight into it. The speaking normally happens on a different day, and then or the same day but earlier in the morning, or even sometimes after the test, normally before the other three tests. So I'm going to start with the listening. The listening has 4 sections, 10 questions per section, so that's a total of 40 questions, and this will take 30 minutes, plus in the case of the paper-based test, you will have an extra 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet, whereas if you take the computer-based test, you will basically have 3 minutes to check your work at the end of section 4. So this is it, the kind of questions. Basically, in section 1, you have a telephone conversation where people are exchanging personal details like name, age, phone number, and this kind of thing, or some maybe a hotel guest is calling a hotel to learn more about the facilities and about the place. So it's this kind of conversation. Generally, it's a telephone conversation involving 2 people, and they are basically exchanging everyday, language kind of information question. So, and then in section 2, you have for the first time just one speaker. So it's a talk or a speech on social needs, meaning what? Maybe it's a tourist guide explaining how the tour around this museum that we're going to visit in the next few minutes is going to be what they're going to visit, where they're going to go first, what they're going to do, when they have a break or something. So this is just an example, but you can notice that sections 1 and 2 are related to everyday language, whereas sections 3 and 4 are more connected to academic and the educational context. So academic language and the educational context. Section 3, moving on then, section 3 is a conversation in an educational context. So imagine the tutor or the advisor or the teacher, the professor, talking to 2 students and asking them about a project that they have just finished, and how they feel about it, or perhaps even before they start the project, their plans, how to go about it, and what they, recommended books they could check out, and this kind of thing. So it's an academic context. Then part 4, section 4, is a talk or lecture on a topic of general interest, but normally this is somehow more specific than, for example, section 2, where you have everyday English. So this section 4 could be about business, or about whales in Australia, what happens to them in the summer, where they go in the winter, something like that. But it sounds more like a formal lecture where you're supposed to take notes. One difference between section 4 and the other sections is that section 4 doesn't have any break between the parts. In all the other sections 1 through 3, you always have a quick like first you answer questions from 1 to 6, let's say, and then you have a quick break to take a look at the other sections, the other questions, and then you have the second part. And in section 4, you don't have this division. You have the whole speech going from the beginning all the way to the end. So this is it about the listening task. I'm going to move on and go straight into the reading, because this is supposed to be just an overview. So in the reading, you have 3 different passages. Normally you have 13 questions in the first passage, 13 in the second, and 14 in the last one. So that means 40 questions altogether, like the listening. And in this case, it takes 60 minutes and that's it. It's 1 hour, and you have to transfer the answers. Even if you're doing the paper-based version, you have to transfer the answers within the time limit. You don't get any extra time to transfer your answers. Number of items. The texts are quite long, normally a couple of pages. Like between I don't remember exactly the number of words, but something like around 1,500 and 2,500, something like that. Yeah, so they can be a little shorter, a little longer sometimes, and the level of difficulty can also vary from task to task. Here's a list of the kind of exercises that you have, but you have gap fills. You have comprehension questions. You may also have like a short summary that you have to use specific words they give you. Sometimes you have to match the heading to the paragraph. You have a paragraph and you have to match a specific heading. And you also have those true, false, not given, or even yes, no, not given kind of questions, which candidates normally find quite tricky. I promise I'll do a video about that soon, about the true, false, not given. Okay, but moving on, then the academic writing, again, it's 1 hour. Okay, you have to deal with 2 different tasks. The first task is a report. Basically, you have to describe either a line graph or a bar chart. Sometimes it's a map, 2 different maps, you have to compare them. It could be a diagram explaining a process. It could be a table containing numbers, a pie chart as well. So these are the options you have. So bar charts or line graphs and tables, maybe these would be the most common ones. Sometimes you have a diagram or a map. And then you have to compare 2 different maps in 2 different moments. But it's it's supposed to be a more like, tell me what you can see in the images text. Then you don't need to make up any information or try to guess why those numbers are happening that way. You just have to report the numbers, and you have to train, you have to practice how to choose what you're going to talk about, how to select what's more relevant, how to write a clear overview of the topic, and you have to include some data as well, so you have to be prepared for that. The second task is a more general opinion essay. Normally you have a problem, or you have to give your opinion about a specific topic, and in this case you have to be able to organize your text well and discuss what you're supposed to discuss, and give your opinion if you are asked to give your opinion. And task 2 is more important than task 1, because task 2 basically takes longer and is supposed to have more words, so it's worth more marks as well. I would say it's like weight 2, while task 1 is weight 1, meaning that 66.6% of your score comes from task 2, and 33.3% comes from task 1. In the future, I'll teach you more about how to calculate the scores of the writing, okay, and what really matters there, what examiners are evaluating there. So this is basically it. And finally, we come to the last module, that's the speaking. It's supposed to last no more than 14 minutes. And it can be as short as 11 minutes. Normally, it's closer to 14 than to 11, so be prepared to speak for 14 minutes. That's basically my message. Part 1, 4 to 5 minutes. It's basically a more informal and questions, familiar topics, easier to relax. You have a set of about 10 to 11 questions to answer in this first part. And that's basically it. The idea here, we have a list of topics that you can have an idea what kind of things might be there. And then part 2, it's what we call the long turn. So the long turn, you're supposed to speak for 2 minutes. You have 1 minute preparation plus 2 minutes to speak, and the instructions, and maybe a follow-up question, 1 or 2 follow-up questions. Follow-up questions are like questions to show that the examiner is paying attention to what you're saying. But basically, that's just it. And so you have to be prepared to speak for 2 minutes. This may be the most challenging part to many candidates. And part 3 is supposed to be more like of a two-way discussion, meaning that the examiners can interact for the first time a little bit more, or can be a little bit more informal and ask you questions that you are supposed to explain something better or something like that. Okay, we call these follow-up questions, like questions that when you answer something and then okay, can you tell me more about that? So can you explain it better? Can you so something like that? And this part is also supposed to last between 4 and 5 minutes, and supposed to be the most important part, because here the difference between parts 1 and 3 is that in part 1 you're talking about more familiar topics, easy to answer, and basically about you, about what you think, about what you do. Yeah? And in part 3 you have more abstract questions that might be more challenging for some candidates. Okay, so this is it. It's a quick overview of the whole IELTS academic. So as you can see here, just to recap, the speaking is supposed to last no more than 14 minutes. It normally happens before the other 3 tasks. Sometimes it can happen after the other 3 tasks, but it's a separate module. Okay, the writing is 1 hour, where you have to deal with 2 tasks. You can start by doing task 2 if you find more appropriate, and then move on to task 1. So it's your decision, but you have to cover the 2 tasks in 1 hour. In the academic reading, you have this, again, 60 minutes. You have 3 passages. They are long texts. Each one contains either 13 or 14 questions. Here they put 11 to 15, but that's actually, I've never seen that. So normally 13 or 14. And finally, the listening, which was the one we started with, which takes about 30 minutes plus the 10 minutes to transfer if you do the paper base, so 40 minutes. You might be asking, so where are the other 20 minutes? You told us about 3 hours for the listening, reading, and writing. Of course, there are instructions between the parts, so those instructions account for the other 20 minutes or so. Plus you have to walk into the room in advance a little earlier before the starting time, and that also involves some time. Yeah? So this is it. If you have any doubts, please let me know. that's basically the overview of the IELTS academic test. Thank you.